Hello, I just want to share this. I apologise for my voice at the moment. I'm just recovering from a very bad asthma attack that I get at this time of year with all the pollen from daffodils and stuff. So, I'm going to share this very important story from Annie Says, and she says, breaking news yesterday, a mosque in the Oscott area of Birmingham was vandalised in a race hate crime. Why is mainstream media not asking questions about it? Why is it always different when it comes to Muslims? Which is a perfectly valid statement, you know. And so
I was just about to leave my house, then I saw this video and I've stopped everything because you need to see it. Now, a mosque in the Birmingham area, I believe it's Oscott, King's Standing part of Birmingham, was vandalised yesterday. It's absolutely disgusting. They're calling them wankers, nobody wants you here, undercover mosque. I'm disgusted, and this keeps happening in the UK over and over again. Mosques are constantly being vandalised and under attack. Mainstream media doesn't talk about it. We don't get a big hoo-ha, oh no, hate crimes against Muslims, no. So it's down to us to talk about it, to share it, and make sure they have to tackle this. I'm going to play the video, and I'm going to quickly upload it, and then I really do need to go, but this is very, very important. So watch the video till the end, comment, share on it, because my content is being held down blatantly, and they will try to do that with this video.
So you saw what it's the words on that mosque, pedo, this, and it's just really disgusting. And she's right, it is disgusting that the media have failed to cover it. And I remember a few years ago, just after Brexit, there was a couple of mosques that were set on fire, and but the police decided that it wasn't a hate crime and it wasn't terrorism. Okay. But we know very well that if a synagogue had been set afire and attacked, it would definitely be a hate crime and it would be terrorism. And I think a covert, they're sending out a message to British people, but very covertly, because they understand the people who know what's going on, how are well informed. We understand perfectly well that the fact that the police arrested and charged two of the men involved in the attack, the arson attack on the ambulances in Golders Green, and yet they got bail. They got bail. They're free to walk about society, even though they've committed arson on ambulances. And so everybody, and we don't see the faces. We don't know what their names are. They've not, what was the other thing? They've not been charged. We don't know what the charges are against them. But what have they been charged with then? Obviously not terrorism. Obviously not a hate crime then. Perhaps what? Arson and damage to property? Maybe. And then you've got, despite the fact that two of the men have been caught, there's armed police patrolling Golders Green to protect the Zio Jewish community there. I mean, I'm not saying they're all Zionists, but obviously that's the gist of it. So it sends a covert message of saying, well, in Britain now, Zionists are above the law, and if it was them that did this as a false flag attack in order to highlight risks against Jewish people, then that's okay. They're at liberty to do that because they were trying to help Jewish people, Zionist Jewish people, because they don't like socialist Jews. Socialism has been under attack now for a very long time because socialism represents humanity, you see. Because socialism includes compassion and care. And that, Nigel Farage stands up there and talks about British culture, that we're losing British culture and whatever. But actually, before Britain was forced to bow down, to lick the boots of the Pope, Britain was a socialist nation. That's our culture. Druid's faith was a very socialist faith. Okay, it was a nature-based faith, and it operated on socialist principles that children had to be looked after, women had rights, women were very socially revered for their skills and their power to deliver life into the world, and the pain they had to go through to do that. And then children were considered holy almost and innocent. They were very well protected. And that was Celtic Christian society, which they probably wouldn't have called themselves Celtic Christians, because at the time they heard of Jesus, I don't think that word was really a common word, the idea of being a Christian, you see. But they followed Jesus because people had travelled to Britain and delivered the message of Jesus that actually mirrored exactly the way they were living, and gave them some power of support. And so, they became Celtic. They embraced Jesus into their Druid faith, you see. They didn't change their faith. They didn't, because Jesus didn't arrive to establish a faith. So they embraced Jesus' message, and they became Celtic Christians. And in their society, women had rights, children had rights. There was laws that families had to look after the disabled, the elderly, the children, the women. Women were warriors. They had their own property. They married, they divorced at their own will. Okay? They were teachers. They preached in the Celtic Christian churches and abbeys, like Whitby Abbey, St Hilda. Well, she was Hilda, an abbess of Whitby Abbey. And, as soon as Roman Christianity started taking over, it was the wealthy at first after the Whitby Synod, but it was not accepted by the general population until William the Conqueror arrived. But Hilda was forced to step down as abbess because as a woman she wasn't allowed to preach in a church. And so there was massive unrest about that, and so the Pope acquiesced to make her a saint after she died. Or I don't know if she was made a saint while she was still alive, but anyway, she was made a saint by the Pope. That was the only concession. But women generally, no. And, with William the Conqueror, suddenly women and children were stripped of all their rights overnight, just like that. They lost all their rights to land, to own property, to fight as a warrior, to teach in a church. They were now second and third class citizens. Children were legally judged minor human beings, insignificant, unimportant, trivial. And to this very day, that legal judgment stands in operation against every child in every nation. They are insignificant, unimportant, trivial human beings. And they are a minor concern. So you don't have to worry where you're bombing if children are getting hurt or where you're laying your mines. It doesn't matter if children are at risk, because children are a minor concern. And certainly they are a minor concern when it comes to an agenda that includes mass depopulation. And so, now I'm going to put this in a wider context of the WEF mandates that push for depopulation. So, first of all, there was deagle.com. I think it might still be up, the website. It suddenly appeared in 2017, and myself and other people were looking at this site wondering, well, where's it from? Who's behind it? Because it listed every single country, and it listed what weapons they had, their military prowess, and how many people were in the country, how big the country was in terms of square meters, how many square meters were available to each person in that country, and what was the gross national product and the economy, and how many people, what was the population figure for that country in 2017. So as an example, Britain's population was something like 68 point something million. Okay. But they also gave a forecast, a 2025 forecast. And in 2025, Britain's population was forecast to drop to 15 million. Okay, from 68 million to 15 million. So that means what? Almost 55 million were going to suddenly disappear out of Britain by 2025. And America, their population was cited as 350 million in 2017, and by 2025 their population was going to drop to 150 million. So, and it was the same for every nation. Most of the nations were going to drop in population numbers. And I was trying to look, well, where are all these million people going to go to then? If they're leaving Britain, leaving America, where are they going? And I couldn't find them when I looked at the other nations. The very few nations whose population figures were set to rise could not account for the amount of people that would be disappearing, you see. And so it was very significant that during COVID, deagle.com suddenly deleted all of its 2025 population forecasts. They were gone. And why? Well, was it a coincidence that it was just at the time that the governments were talking about giving people experimental genetic therapy jabs? Well, of course it was. I mean, it could have been a coincidence, but I think in a situation like that, we cannot accept it was a coincidence, because there is lawful suspicion that there's a plot happening. Okay? And it was significant also that the Georgia Guidestones around the same time were suddenly bulldozed. And that states that the ideal population for Earth, for humanity, is under 500 million people. So, that basically was a death sentence then for 6.5 million people at the time those stones were erected. Sorry, 6.5 billion people. Nobody made a fuss about it, you see. They put those stones up. Oh, there were people saying, oh, look at that. Isn't it? Oh, look what they're planning. But, nobody was outraged, really, in the media. Nobody questioned it. The media just the media almost celebrated it. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Look, in so many different languages, and it's talking about the future for humanity. And, people were going to visit the stones. And then there were the conspiracy theorists, you see. There were the conspiracy theorists that were saying, well, this is a plot against humanity. This is like advocating a human cull. I mean, all the other statements on it were were brilliant. Yeah, it'd be lovely to live like that. But only 500 million people. Who made a fuss about it? When there was a threat against it was an open threat against 6.5 billion people. And this is how they'd get away with stuff, you see, because they always tell you what they're going to do, but not in, open. They don't tell you openly, but they make it public. And then they watch for the reaction of the public. And if nobody picks up on it, bang, they've won that battle. Already they've been told, yeah, come on then, carry on. And then with COVID, everybody just went. The people that were saying no to questioning, they were COVID idiots. They won that one. So how many people took the jab because they were scared they were going to lose the job, which was completely illegal. All of it was completely illegal. But everybody, it's a pandemic, so, we have to go with that. You see. And they're using the same thing now with Zionism and what's going on in Gaza and America breaking the law to attack Iran because, all right, it's against the law, but it had to be done because Iran was a threat. Was it? Who was the threat? Who was the threat here? America's the threat. Britain's the threat. Israel's the real threat against the whole world. Because according to their ideology, everybody who's not a Jew is actually an animal who needs to live by Noahide laws. And only Zionist Jews get to live with human rights. And international law will be what they say it is, not what we, the people, fought for through 2 world wars. You see. The American Constitution is trashed completely. Because Americans, sorry, if you're not a Zionist Jew, you're not actually a human being. You don't deserve a constitution. It's gone, look, it's going. And they do it piecemeal, by stealth. They are fascists. Zionism is fascism. Nazism is fascism. Extremist religious ideology that robs women and children of rights is fascism. And people don't realise that Britain was under the boot and rule of fascism, has been under that for over 1,000 years. It was only just after the war that we got some concessions that, all right, then you can have an NHS. All right, you've got equality, human rights. All right, racism is against the law, blah, blah, blah. And now they're taking it all away. It's all going. So I think the only thing that we can do, because we can't fight them, and I think it's a waste of time standing up against them. What we need to do is stand up for something. You see, we need to get strong. The weak need to get strong. And the only way to get strong is to start exercising your legal muscles. Because we have legal, lawful rights. And when you start using your rights, your muscles get stronger. And if you fail to use your rights, your muscles will get very weak. And that's why people are very weak now, because we have not been exercising our muscles. We've been spending all our times protesting against this, against that, but we have not been standing up for ourselves, for our communities, for our rights. And, it does disturb me as well if this has happened to a mosque in the Oscott area of Birmingham, that nobody is now protecting the mosque, that the general community haven't come out to show their support for Muslim people, you see. Because that's what we need to do. We need to support each other to get strong. That's how we get strong. Because, as I've always said, every single person is a raindrop, and together we are a storm to deliver the rainbow into life. And what is the rainbow? The rainbow is our humanity, compassion, that includes every colour, that recognises we are a diverse species, but like a rainbow, we are all of one light. And there are no dark, strict lines separating one colour from another. The rainbow, the colours merge at the edges, but every colour still stands out on its own, because that's universal law. That's how things happen when we live by our humanity and we stand by compassion, because that is what is being oppressed here, is our compassion. That is what gave us human rights and the law in the first place, was compassion, because the world said never again. You see? And that is what is under attack. And the only way to survive that attack is to actually show our compassion. You know, I remember talking to somebody once, this guy, and he was talking about compassion and stuff. And, you know, he said, I try to be compassionate. And I said to him, no, you actually try most of the time not to be compassionate. But now and again, you allow yourself some compassion. And he just looked at me. Because it was true. Because we are, all of us, all the time, from birth, basically being programmed into oppressing our emotions and stuff like compassion, because that's weak. That's a weakness. Our compassion is a weakness. But it isn't. It's our strength. And when we live by compassion, then we will benefit from universal law of abundance in compassion, because that's the only way we're ever going to get abundance, is through compassion. Austerity always delivers fascism, because people get so oppressed, economically oppressed, and they can't fight that enemy, so they quickly focus on the officially designated scapegoats. Oh, Muslims, that's your problem. Look, these people in boats, they're your problem. And you see, people like easy solutions, because, you know, our minds, our thoughts are like electricity, and they always look for the easiest route, you see, to find some kind of release from the negativity that they're burdened with, so they can unleash it. And so, you know, the weakest people in society always get it. Women denied all their rights, second-class citizens, their children, third-class citizens, black people, fourth-class citizens, black women, fifth-class citizens, because they're all designated inferior, and they've all suffered terrible abuse as a direct result of those official judgments. And that's exactly what's happening to Muslim people and the mosques. You know, as Israel commits its genocide, 680,000 people dead is the real figure. The figure that the politicians are bandying about is just the 70,000 that have been recorded by hospitals, who've actually been given death certificates. The vast majority of them, no. We don't know. We don't know what happened to them. Except the mass graves are being uncovered with, you know, people shot dead with the hands tied behind the back. So, you know, the IDF can't claim that these people were a shield for Hamas. Children included. We have the testimony of an IDF ex-soldier who said that he was forced to drive a tank over the bodies of Palestinians. And he said some of them were dead, but some of them weren't. And he could hear the bones crunching and the screams of agony as he drove over them. And the reality is that if he had refused to do that, then he could so easily have been shot by the military, because he was an African Jew, which are looked down on in Israeli society anyway, even though they've been invited into Israel, but it seems only to do the most menial jobs. And so, yeah, there was a risk that he could have been shot, and then it would have been said, oh, well, you know, he got shot on duty. And I think we do need to recognise the level of fear that is operating within Israel itself, that a lot of people are afraid to speak out and do their best to openly show that they are with the Zionists. Of course, the Torah Jews who live in their own communities have always stood against it. They've always refused to fight and to take part in that war. They have condemned what's going on in Palestine very openly. But a lot of people who aren't Torah Jews within the Israeli society are afraid to speak out. And yet some still do find the courage, to protest about what's happening in Gaza, and they don't support it. And the same is happening in Britain now. People do believe it's a crime to speak out against Zionism. It isn't. It isn't a crime. It's a crime to be anti-Semitic against Jews, Muslims, anybody. But it's not a crime to call out Zionism, because Zionism is not a religion. It was created, just over 100 years ago. And so, it's like this, I wrote this, Karate with Words, It's Time to Fight Back, expressing concern over the rise of Zionism and Zionists within all aspects of UK politics. I've shared it in my videos before. I'll leave the link to it. But people are scared to comment. They're scared to share it. They're scared to comment on it because they're frightened of being put in on a list as anti-Zionist, or be the police suddenly banging the door down. And, some people, friends of mine who read it, and they've like, well, aren't you scared of the police banging your door down? And I said, well, yeah, I am scared of anybody who's going to bang my door down and come into my house uninvited. But if they do arrest me, she said, but what would you do? If they arrest you, what would you say? And I'd just say, well, as far as I'm concerned, you're all agents of tyranny, and I'm not saying anything to you, okay? Except I stand up for my right to criticise terrorists, because that's what Zionists are now, because they support terrorism. What is going on in Gaza is terrorism. There's no two ways about it. They've broken international law that wants to stop acts of terror. That's why it was written. So innocent civilians would never be terrorised again because of stuff their leaders are doing. You see? And now we witnessed the terror of what's happened in Syria, and now more terror in Iran. And before that, it was Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan. All terror, all of it to stop the rise of socialism, because Islamic is fundamentally socialist. And now they're attacking socialists in Britain. Socialists got kicked out of the Labour Party. That should have been a massive news, but it isn't. It's like, well, yeah, socialism's weak, isn't it? It's a weakness. They're not going to do anything for society. Or it's communism. They'll turn into communists. Well, things only become extreme when they are extremely oppressed. And in Britain, we've got the choice of, like I say, the Nazi Nigel Farage. He's a Nazi. How can it be a political choice? You see, compassion's totally crushed out of the whole picture, and we've got the choice of Nazis or Zionists to be the next Prime Minister. That's the choice. And, I'm really upset with the Green Party now because, there was an interview with Zach Polanski, and he was talking about Zionism because of this bill that was introduced against Zionism into the party, and it was filibustered. Annie Says has done a video about that. It's really good. I'll leave you the link to it under this. And, and then Zach Polanski was questioned about it, and he's talking about the nuances of Zionism. Well, there are no nuances of Zionism. Zionism is a supremacist faith. Therefore, it's criminal. It's actually therefore then run by inferior people, because only an inferior person could look at somebody and consider themselves superior. It is narcissistic. That's what it is. And, you know, Britain is full of narcissists because that's how people are programmed to be, to look down on the people under you. Oh, he isn't educated. That's a rough diamond, you know. Yeah, he's a rough diamond. Yeah, he's talking the truth and everything, but he isn't educated. He's not a professional. We only give our attention to professionals and educated, or, oh, look, a working class woman, CSA survivor with PTSD. We're not going to listen to her. That's me. Don't listen to me. I am the lowest of the low. Oh, look at her screaming on her videos, going crazy. Me going crazy? I'm not going crazy. I'm exercising on my videos my lawful human right to freedom of speech and expression of the upset and the pain and the trauma and the horror and everything that I feel that I've been witnessing and been absolutely powerless to do anything about, and even being, you know, oppressed in terms of the reach of my videos and writings, which nobody dares share that Zionist thing. That says a lot to me. It scares me. It scares me because people who are afraid and allow their fear to dictate their thoughts, they are going to face the reality of everything they feared, you know, of what they fear, because they're refusing to address it in a positive way. And that's why I say the only positive way we can address it is through uniting. And even with Zionists, you know, to appeal to Zionists, look, you're welcome to come and join us. If you're going to leave that philosophy behind, if you've woken up and seen the light, come and join us. We have to lose our judgments against each other. But we need to make a judgment about what is good and what is bad. Because we need to think about our children, because we are the last living line of defence for their futures, whether they're going to be slaves or creative human beings living in a compassionate world that cares. Okay? And that is what we need to understand, who we are and where we are. So, sorry about Doggy again. So, look, I send my love to everybody. Please follow Annie Says. I think she's brilliant. She's got some great stuff to say. And, you know, to Zach Polanski, I think you need to understand, you know, why people are asking these questions now about Zionism. And so, yeah, we all need to, as I say, recognise who we are and where we stand in the struggle, as in the words of Bob Marley. So God bless and love to everybody. If I can end the video.